All right. Okay. Hey, Joe, how are you?
Never been better.
Right on, right on. Well, thanks again for being here. Hey, everybody. I hope everyone's well. Thank you so much for joining this call. I'm excited for today because we're spending time with not only an outstanding tab business owner, but a friend for a long time, Joe Zente. Joe Zente has been one of our most successful tab business owners in tab from both the membership perspective, leveraging the additional income perspective. He's based in Austin, Texas. So he has a lot of experience. I've worked with Joe in different capacities on franchise advisory boards and other committees where he's helped us guide the organization for many years, many years. So I'm excited for all of you to have an opportunity to pick Joe's brain. So first of all, everybody is on mute right now. So please do me a favor, ask everything and anything that you want to know from Joe. He's happy to answer it. Just type it into the question box. I will make sure I read that to him. So welcome everybody. So uh, let me start by saying, why are we doing these calls? Well, our tab business owner community are very busy people, and they will absolutely go out of their way and have conversations with you as you investigate the tab opportunity. And they're very generous with themselves. But one of the things we do know is that 80% of what they communicate to you when you call, they say to every individual. So we decided to have a better use and efficiency of our tab business owner community as well as your time, and have these panels where you could ask questions, then record them, and then we have a whole lot of recordings of a bunch of people who've been through something similar. Clearly, if you have more that you want to talk to Joe about after this, I'm sure he'd be happy to take your calls and answer it, but it'll move that hour conversation down to a 20-minute conversation, which everybody I'm sure would appreciate. So thank you for that. Uh, Also, I just want to keep in mind, everyone, that we are governed by the rules of the Federal Trade Commission. So what you're going to hear from Joe, this is Joe's experiences. This is Joe's numbers, whatnot. There's no guarantees of anything, but this is one individual's, one practice, how it works, and you'll hear that from everybody. So do your due diligence, ask good questions, and we'll have a great moment. I guess meeting here today. So Joe, if you don't mind, would you mind kind of just introducing yourself, a little bit about your background, your business, your area, what kind of business you have going on and whatnot? I will start monitoring the questions. I'll give you guys all some time to type some things in, and then we'll start going. So, Joe, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Zente. I'm, as Jason said, I'm here in Austin. This in my 20th year with TAB. We have 8 boards here. I have 6 contract facilitators, 5 of which are active. I have a new one that we haven't launched yet. And I have another business. Well, just from a background perspective, I've always been an entrepreneur. You know, before TAB, I founded, grew, and sold 5 companies. My educational background is engineering, but I spent most of the early part of my career in on the business side of business, mostly in sales leadership and running divisions of Fortune 500 companies. And then in '97, I founded a company called Z3 Performance Development, which is a sales consulting and training company. And that company led to me learning about TAB. And like I say, I've been with TAB now for 20 years.
Crazy, 20 years, unbelievable how time flies. Yeah,
I guess I'm aging myself.
it's unbelievable. Yeah, and I've been with you for the whole 20 of them. I can't believe it. So, Joe, talk a little bit about your business. Tell me about the territory. I mean, your membership. How many members do you have? What now? What could you share about what you have going on there with the tab practice?
Yeah. So we have 55 members, like I say, 8 boards. And you know, the territory is the Austin metro area, which it's really interesting. You know, when I started here, it was a small town. It's growing pretty substantially now. It's we've got all sorts of diversity in our membership. I guess the membership very much represents the sort of the demographics of the business community in Austin. We've got a lot of technology companies. We've got some construction companies. Obviously, like most tab businesses, we've got a number of service providers, IT service companies, marketing companies, CPAs. We've got a lawyer. You know, probably represents a lot of your businesses. We have some members that have been here for a real long time. You know, 20 years or so. So you know, we try very hard to maintain a culture and to walk our talk. And you know, it served us well. And as a consequence, I mean, we're just loaded with great people. We have great members, great facilitators, and everyone seems to sort of read from a very similar script with regard to abundance mentality and walking their talk and accountability.
Awesome, Joe. Joe, what do you tell us about the tenure of your member? You said you had one member, you mentioned some 20 years, but what, you know, of your members, what would you say, how long have people been there, or what's your average length of stay? Anything that you could talk about your membership and how long they've been able to stay with you? Yeah,
so I think the average member in Austin stays about 7 years. Like I say, we've got, it's a difficult number to calculate because we've got some members that have been here for 12, 13, 15, 20 years, you know, so if they haven't left, they don't go into the they don't go into the numbers, you know, so which is sort of cool. But you know, we're very committed to continuing marketing and sales, you know, so that we continue to bring new members into the fold. And I think the number one reason people leave tab in Austin is because they sell their business or they run into health problems.
Yeah. Well, Joe, talk to me a little bit. Why do you think? I mean, that's, first of all, it's very impressive. Now, I'm sure as the folks on the call see that we say from an average around the community, the average tenure, I think in the FDD is 4.7 or 4.8 years. Please check that, everybody on the call. You're well ahead of that. What do you think it is that it makes our model as sticky as it is?
Well, so I mean, I think tab is the greatest value in the world for a private business owner. I mean, if you look around, there's all sorts of things they could do and resources they can access. But you know, I tell everybody I meet who's a business owner that tab is for business owners, but it's absolutely positively not for everyone. And you know, and I don't say that as a sales technique. I say that because I absolutely mean it, you know. And you know, and I think part of retention starts with that conversation. If you select the right members and you retain, you know, you maintain a good culture, I think it just builds on itself, you know, and it becomes extremely sticky.
Yeah. Please type in your questions, everybody. I'll ask questions, but I would love them to get your questions. So this is your meeting with Joe. So I would just want to facilitate it. Joe, talk about your pricing of your members. How do you price your membership?
So we've changed this a little bit recently, but right now we're charging $895. We only have one price, so we don't do the tiered membership at all. But we've injected a weekly coaching versus a monthly coaching thing, and several people have gone for that. So we charge $12.95 for membership with weekly coaching and $8.95 for membership with once a month, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So Joe, when you went to the weekly coaching, was that when the pandemic started and we all kind of moved to that era and you just maintained it, or did you do it before that? What made you decide to do that?
So one of the facilitators we brought on about 4 years ago was really a professional coach. I mean, she came to TAB with professional coaching, so she saw the whole world through the lens of professional coaching, and peer learning and facilitation and all the other stuff that TAB does was sort of an add-on to that. But she was really laser focused on that. And one of the things that we found anyway over time is that some members just need more touching base, so we started introducing that concept first on her board, and some people went for it, and we were actually surprised how many people became interested. So we up leveled some people that were doing monthly coaching to weekly coaching, and then we started offering it up front, in the conversation when we meet with people initially before they join.
Yeah. Roger has a question for you. He says, you have 5 contract facilitators and 8 boards. Do your contract facilitators do other things as well?
All of them do. Yeah. Yeah. So, I tell contract facilitators when they come into TAB that they're not going to get, most of them all of them, have had long, illustrious careers and have earned a lot of money in their life. And I tell all of them that they're not going to get wealthy, on TAB dues, So, but they can get a nice recurrent source of revenue from TAB dues, but it's not going to make them wealthy. However, by being part of TAB Austin, they'll have access to a tremendous amount of other opportunities, and they access those opportunities. So I think if 4 or at least 4 of them, but probably 5 of them earn a 6-figure income outside of TAB, just doing additional consulting and things like that.
Yeah. Stephanie's asking a question. She says, you said TAB isn't for everyone. So who are you looking for, Joe?
Yeah, good question. So, the qualification criteria, people ask me all the time, am I qualified to be in TAB? And I tell them, it's not about revenue. It's not about number of employees. It's not about how long you've been a business owner. I tell them it's about, you need to be the decision maker. It's really about commitment, commitment to improve their business or improve their life. Okay. They need to be willing and able to give and receive open and honest feedback. Okay, and to take action in areas that require action. They need to be humble. Okay, so I tell people all the time, if they have all the answers, we should just stop the conversation about TAB right now. And they need to want to join TAB for the right reasons. If they want to join TAB because they see TAB as a place where a bunch of owners hang out and they could sell their stuff, and they see it as a networking group and all of that, I'm not really interested in having a whole lot of, I tell them there's 1,000 other places in Austin that they could go for networking. All right, so they need to join TAB for the right reasons. But if they join, if they meet those criteria, like I say, they'll stay a long time, and TAB will be an unbelievable value for them.
Stephen has a question for you. It says, how many people do you have to meet in order for you to find one member?
So that's an interesting question. How many people do I have to meet? So I talk to everybody that I do meet. I talk about TAB, and I'm amazed how sometimes just about everybody knows somebody who knows somebody that owns a business. So I would say a whole lot in that respect. But as far as meeting with business owners, if I meet with a business owner, I can determine usually in the first 5 minutes or not whether or not they meet those criteria I just talked about, to see if they're if they're serious about improving their business or improving their life, or if they just want to share their resume with me and tell me how great they are, so that they think I'm going to introduce them to other people to sell their stuff. And I would say probably one out of 3 business owners that I meet with wind up in TAB at some point. Maybe not that month. It might be 2 years from now. But
Excellent, excellent. Keep putting in your questions, folks. Joe would be happy to answer them. Robert says, do you do sales training or other consulting with your members? Is there any conflict there?
I don't think there's any conflict at all. I've done sales training for, for forever. And like I say, I started a sales development company 5 years before I became part of TAB. So yes, I do tons of sales training and sales development, and a significant portion of it with TAB members. I do a lot of it with non-TAB members as well. But as far as conflict goes, I don't see any conflict.
Yeah. Nor do we. I mean, we actually think it's wonderful. If you have an area expertise and you are doing it with high integrity, well, you should be able to support your members. So, Joe, speaking of that, talk about your to whatever extent you're comfortable, your revenues from membership and your revenues from your additional consulting out of the TAB opportunity.
So our membership revenues have been tracking at about $400,000 a year for the last, I don't know, quite a while, right around there. We took a little dip last year, during COVID. Actually, I was sort of astonished, because when the pandemic first hit, I thought it would fall a little bit more than it actually did, but it fell, and we put a couple people on scholarship. We wouldn't let anybody leave because they couldn't afford to stay. So, and that has served us well. On the consulting side of the business, I would say that the revenues from TAB are probably equivalent, another $400,000 in consulting for Z3. I'm not talking about for the other, for the other facilitators.
Yeah, excellent. So more came out of the business opportunity. So that's $800,000 just alone, just between membership dues and additional consulting. Very, very impressive, Joseph. So Joe, talk a little bit about the pandemic. Because a lot of people are sitting there going, now why is TAB? Is that crazy, or how do you feel about it now coming out of it? What's your thoughts on how all that played out?
When the pandemic hit, like I said, we were like everybody else when we heard about the pandemic. So we got together and we said, what do we do? And just like everybody else, we had a lot more questions than answers. We were as uncertain as anybody. So our remedy to how we were going to deal with the pandemic was we made a decision to just up the engagement. So we just decided to be there for people instead of having one meeting a month. Some of our boards went to 2 meetings a month. Some of our boards went to 4 meetings a month, in much shorter increments, because things were changing really fast. We also did probably, over the course of a year, we probably did 30 or 35 other kind of events. We did events on PPP. We were bringing, attorneys. We were bringing HR people. We were bringing payroll people. We were bringing all sorts of resources to the membership, so that we could help them get the answers and and navigate the trials and tribulations of the pandemic. And consequently, like I said, a lot of their businesses were hurting during this time, so we took it on the chin with them, but they didn't go away. And now a lot of them are coming off of scholarship, which is great. But we really didn't lose any members throughout that period. But we got an unbelievable amount of gratitude for doing that. And so many of them told us that they just wouldn't have been able to get through those times without TAB. So they really appreciate it.
Years ago, you used to bring up to me, raving fans. You created some raving fans because of this pandemic, Joe, huh?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Alexander wants to know, what tactics do you use to attract prospects?
So a number. I mean, one of the things that I've come to realize in working with TAB is that no one technique works forever. So I've always tried an integrated marketing approach and sort of measured the results. And if something's working, you keep hitting that bell until it peters out, and then something else comes in. But I've never tried to put all my eggs in one basket with regard to marketing. So certainly before the pandemic, we did a lot of content events, so we attracted business owners to the room by putting on good content, and there were all sorts of presentations and all sorts of experts we would bring in to have these conversations, but we would attract them with good content events. Some of those content events, we started hanging discovery board meetings on the back end of them, which was very successful. Because we have a lot of members here in TAB Austin, we've always done additional social events so that members of different boards could get to meet each other. And so one of the very effective techniques that we have here is we always have prospects come to the events as well as members. And the easiest way to get a new TAB member is have a non-TAB member hang out with a TAB member, and the TAB member will sell them on TAB. So that's always a good thing. LinkedIn has been very successful for us. We've continued to maintain a consistent LinkedIn process ever since LinkedIn really became a thing. So that's been a good one. I write blogs every month. A lot of people read my blogs and wind up, contacting me because they read a blog, whether it has anything to do with TAB or not. The conversation always shifts to them and their vision and where they are and where they want to be. And, so it's very easy to inject TAB into the conversation. When I started with TAB, I did a lot of owner-to-owner calls, which are very, very, very successful, especially if you're starting an organization. It's a great way to build an organization. Once you have 20 or 30 members, it becomes easier to leverage the numbers that you have, I think. So we shifted more towards doing a lot of these events.
That's great. Alexander, if you want to go deeper on that, just ask a follow-up and I'll be happy to ask Joe. Christopher, he has a question for you. Thank you for the information and the answers to the questions. This is Chris. I have a question about starting. How did you choose your niche, and what groups did you decide to stay with in the target market? I don't know if I understand that exactly. How did you choose your niche, and what groups did you decide to stay with the target market? Chris, if you don't mind, maybe giving us a little bit more clarity on what you do. But Joe, do you have any idea, how to answer that one?
I mean, I could only get, is Chris providing you with more information?
Yeah, he will. I'm going to jump to the next one and see if he can clarify it. Victor, thank you for your question. He says, talk a little bit more about the contracted coaches work with you and the boards.
Okay, so what there's a couple things. The first thing is I think that contract facilitators are a very, very special breed, and you have to be pretty thoughtful before bringing on contract facilitators. So like any sort of talent acquisition thing, I don't want to wait until my quarterback goes down with a broken leg before I start looking for a quarterback. So I'm always out there in the community looking for contract facilitators because I think it's a special blend of individual. They need to be at the right place in their life. They need to have business acumen. They need to have emotional intelligence. I want them to be much more of a coach and a listener and a facilitator than a consultant, even if they are a great consultant, or at least be willing to be that person. So I'm always putting the word out that I'm always looking for great people in the organization. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that I don't expect our contract facilitators to be member acquirers. Okay, I want their role to be able to deliver unprecedented value, to be great facilitators, to be great coaches, so that they retain members. And I and my assistant are in charge of member acquisition. So if they happen to know someone, or if they stumble upon someone, I'll incentivize them and provide them with additional revenue if they happen to be responsible for bringing someone into the organization. but I don't try to find contract facilitators who are great business developers. I want them to be great contract facilitators. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, Victor, if you want to go deeper, just type it in. I'm happy to convey it to Joe. And staying with contract facilitators, Eric has a question. He says, how do you share revenue with contract?
So I've got a model. Like I said, I want to incentivize them for retention and for being great contract facilitators. So I incentivize them on 5 different things. I incentivize them, for starters, to do what I would consider the mandatory parts of Blueprint. All right. So, the personal vision, SWOT, DISC, there's a couple components of Blueprint that I want to make sure that they complete in the first 3 months of a new member's membership. So they get an additional bump to their commissions if they complete that. They get another bump if they retain a member for 13 months into the 13th month. They get another bump if they retain them into the 37th month. They get another bump if they retain what I call a full board, which is 8 members or more. Okay. And like I said, they get an additional bump if they have something to do with bringing the member to tab.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. That's helpful. And again, Eric, if you want to go deeper, you want more, just type it in. I'll be sure to ask him. Christopher, I feel bad. Did you want to follow up with that so we could try and answer your question about his niche and all that? If you type that in, I'll be glad to make sure he hears it. Stephanie wants to know. Hold on, I just moved. Whoops. Apologize. Hold on. I just screwed up the screen here. Stephanie wants to know, what kind of connection or engagement do you have with other franchisees in the system?
Well, I mean, I consider a whole lot of tab franchisees very, very close friends of mine. So I have a very, very intimate relationship with a whole lot of franchisees. Back in the days when we were having physical conferences, I mean, that was always one of the highlights of my career, to get together with all the tab franchisees, in Colorado. But in the absence of that, I've sat on 2 tab boards I've sat on one. I've always been on at least one tab board of my own in tab, and for the last 5 or 6 years, I've sat on 2. I'm on the top tier board, and I'm also on what we call the Tab Texas board, although there's some franchisees there now that are not from Texas. So,
how'd they get in? How'd they get into that club? Right. All right. Christopher is following up. Adding context to the question, when starting with Tab, what target market did you advertise to, and how did you choose them? Did you choose a specific expertise that you had and line it up with the members for funneling them in? Basically, how have you chosen your clients?
yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So I really didn't get too vertical. When I started, what I did was I wanted to start 2 boards. And again, I'm aging myself. This is back in the days when we were sending faxes. So I relied on a lot of the data that Tab supplied in terms of the types of members that were most attracted to the Tab value proposition. And I selected businesses in those areas. I didn't want members that were too small, so that so there was a revenue floor. I can't remember what it was. It was probably $1 million, but I can't remember it. And then back then I wanted to target 2 geographies because Austin, even though there weren't a whole lot of people there then, it's a pretty large geography. It covers mileage, so I wanted to do that. So Chris, I really wasn't that concerned with the verticals. I took out most retail it was mostly business to business businesses. And I looked at revenue and I took a look at tab data and I used that.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Eric has asked a question. What are the commission rates? I don't know what that means, Eric. If you could follow up with what you mean by a commission rate, I'd be happy to try to address that. How long does it take you to manage a board each month? That's from Stephanie.
Yeah. So Stephanie, my facilitators do the board management, so they take what they take. But what I suggest to our facilitators, especially the new facilitators, is to allocate 25 hours for a board of 8. Okay, and that includes travel. So now, with COVID, some of our facilitators are still doing some virtual coaching. So I don't know if that's going to return, because some members want to be coached virtually. So,
yeah, I mean, Joe, we're hearing some folks are never going back to face-to-face coaching. With new members, their meetings, say once a quarter to build relationship, but people like the idea of the coaching. The boards, they want to get back together, but they're really comfortable with this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah. So what'd you say, about 25 hours for a board?
We're a board of 8. I tell people 25 hours for a board of 8.
Yeah. And that's gotten much more efficient with the virtual coaching.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And even before the virtual coaching, I think some of our more experienced facilitators, after they've been with their members for a while, that numbers goes down quite a bit. But
excellent. Victor, do contracted coaches have their own boards or support your boards? And what fees do they pay?
So so all of the board members are members of Tab Austin, so it's not their boards. All right, they're contract facilitators for Tab Austin. Okay, they can do whatever consulting they want with the members. I don't take a cut of their consulting, so they can do whatever they want with their members or with members of other boards. And one of the things I really like about our team here is they really love each other and they support each other. So they refer business to each other. If they're great in marketing, but one of the contract facilitators who's great in mergers and acquisitions has a member who needs help with marketing, they could refer them to the marketing facilitator. So they all work together and help each other. And that doesn't just help each other, but it also helps the members, because the members essentially get the entire team of Tab Austin, when they, if they have an issue that the facilitator and or their board can't help them with, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think there was a second part of that question that I missed, though, Jason. Was there?
I don't know. I apologize because I just deleted off my screen so I don't get confused. But Eric has a question. He says, do you use other TBOs as subject matter experts at board meetings? If so, how are they compensated?
I have in the past. When they've come down, when they've left their area and they've flown to Austin to do it, I've compensated them in a variety of different ways, depending upon the length and the complexity of what they were doing. But I've got so many friends in Tab Austin now that are experts, and we've been doing things virtually, and we just help each other. So there hasn't been. As far as referring members or referring consulting or something like that, I always do something with regard to that, paying a referral fee or something, 15% or whatever.
You'll find, folks, that we're easy people in Tab. A dinner and a cocktail, you pretty much compensate us for showing, at least amongst the family of Tab TBOs.
Right.
So Eric's following up. What are the commission rates meaning for contract facilitators? I guess what percentage are you paying them? You said you have incentives, but where do you start? Where do you wind up?
Yeah, so it starts at 20% and it goes to 45%. So it's 5% for each of those 5 things that I mentioned.
Excellent. Great. Uh, Tell us a little bit. This is from Marsha. Tell us a little bit about the support you get from the TAB home office.
So, because I'm an old guy and I've been around forever, I know most of the people at TAB. So if we need something, we know how to find it. And I was an area developer for 4 or 5 years. So, I have a good sense of what's going on, and I keep very close tabs on things that are changing. But so as far as most of the support that we rely on has to do with administrative and financial, because we have a lot of people that are constantly changing things. But I rely a lot on support from other people in the community, from my top tier board, with regard to best practices and what's working and what's not working. And so, if we have a question regarding blueprint or technology, we'll go to Dave, or, I know I could always call Jason if I need something. So it's there when I need it, whatever I need. I don't know if that answers the question.
That much support anymore these days. He provides more support than he gets at this point in his career. So what's the biggest lesson you think you learned being a TAB business owner?
Oh my God. So I don't know how many board meetings I've been to, probably 600 or 700 board meetings. I've run a lot of businesses in my life, but I'm such a better business owner today than I was, just through osmosis. I'm probably not a fast learner. If you tell me anything 25 times, it'll probably start to sink in. But I've learned so much just from being part of TAB, from the members, from the community, from helping other members, from the TBOs, from my peer boards. I don't think I could point to one thing. I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, it would be hard. It's a hard question. Kevin would like to know, he says, just like our TAB members are selected for a board based on match and fit, what are some of the traits you believe are needed for a TBO to be successful?
So I would say probably the first thing would be persistence. Okay, so TAB has figured out how to do this. And starting is a little complicated. You're on a lot of learning curves. No matter where you came from. If you're Jack Welch and you came to TAB, you would be on a lot of learning curves. All right, but I think what you need is an open mind, persistence, tenacity, listening. I'd say adaptability, and a unbridled willingness to leave your comfort zone.
Oh, I like that last part. Yeah. Roger wants to know, what are the biggest mistakes TBOs or franchisees make?
I think on the sales side, or on the member acquisition side, I think some TBOs make the mistake, if they've been selling other things, either products or selling for a very large company or capital goods or something like that, those skills immediately translate into be able to effectively generate TAB members. And the reason is because TAB is like this multi-tentacled thing that can help so many people in so many different ways, but it can help different people in different ways depending upon where they are and what they access, but both recurrently and surgically. So it's sort of this squishy thing to describe to someone. All right. And so I think some TBOs may struggle with the idea that, I've been selling stuff for 20 years, so I'm just going to come in and start knocking down 15 tab members in my first month here. Okay. It doesn't go that way. And I'm telling you this from someone who has spent a lot of time in sales in his career. Okay. So it's important to just be patient and follow the processes and like I say, be persistent.
Great.
I'm sorry, Jason, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. You're the one that they want to hear.
I mean, so that's the big, I think that's the biggest thing.
Marissa would like to know, what is something you learned when you were tab that you now know that you wish you knew when you started tab? Question, Marissa.
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I knew that tab was available when I was starting all my companies. Because I could have saved millions of dollars and lots of heartache and stress.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was pretty successful running companies and leading companies and selling companies, but, the biggest thing I think about tab is that you really don't know what you don't know. And people join tab, and people almost always join tab with a particular problem in their mind, and they almost always can get that problem resolved in tab, but they stay in tab for a completely different reason. So they join tab for one reason, they stay for a completely different reason, and they don't know why they're going to stay until they get in tab. So I guess another way to say that is that, in tab, you'll find the answers to your questions, but you'll always find better questions, and that's really, really, really valuable, because better questions are worth a fortune.
Yeah, interesting answer. Eric has a question. Can you talk about how you use, you must mean Pipedrive, the tab CRM, and if you could improve them, what would you recommend?
I don't use Pipedrive. I've used Salesforce for, I had the Salesforce's predecessor before I became involved with tab. So with my other business with Z3, I had a complex, I invested a lot of time and money into customizing a CRM, which wasn't Pipedrive. Pipedrive came along later. So I use my CRM to operate both Z3 and tab. So I don't use Pipedrive, but I think Pipedrive is definitely the way to go from a tab standpoint.
Great. Have you ever had to fire a member, and how did that go?
I've never had to fire a member. We've had to have some very difficult conversations with people, but I think we've always gotten to a place early enough in the disintegration of a member's behavior before we had to fire them. So we've had some conversations which probably, which may have led to them deciding not to stick around very long. But I don't recall ever, asking somebody to leave tab.
Okay. Jake would like to know, how many hours a week do you work in the tab business?
I personally probably spend about half of my time on the tab side of the equation and half of my time on the Z3 side of the equation. From a time consumption standpoint, what I'm investing in is events and member acquisition and, supporting the facilitators and attending the board meetings on a rotating basis and things like that. And, I stay connected to all of the members. And the other side of my business, which is consulting, takes a lot of my doing time, right? My fulfillment time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Jake has a follow-up. He says, what would you do differently if you started your tab business tomorrow?
That's a good question.
You could think about it. We could come back to it.
Yeah, yeah. Let's
What
come
you,
back to that one. I'm not sure. I think um, I try to learn fast and fail fast, and whenever I learn something, I try to start implementing it if it's the right thing to do, and I'm willing to fail. So, it's sort of an iterative process.
yeah. You mentioned, I'm going to ask you a question since I'm waiting for a couple more things to get typed in here. You were an area developer. You helped award, launch, support. What are the biggest things that you see that TBOs do right, and what are the things that you see they did wrong as they're running their business? So from someone who's run a successful practice, launched people, supported people, what would you say that the successful people do and the unsuccessful do?
Yeah, so I think the successful people don't. I think the successful people don't try to change the process. TAB has tweaked and refined these processes, these member acquisition processes, these facilitation processes, these coaching processes, um, you know, uh, over 30 years. I think the unsuccessful ones rely on their vast experience that they come to TAB with and try to do it differently. you know so uh, so I would stay very, very focused. The second thing, I would stay laser focused on not getting distracted and getting members. So not because if you get 3 or 4 members and you start experimenting, I think that's dangerous. I think you want to stay laser focused until you hit your, I guess, what you would consider your first milestone, and that's different for different TBOs. That might be 10 members or 15 members or 20 members or 25 members, whatever it is for you. But I think you stay laser focused and don't get distracted, and don't let things distract you, because you have a lot of time. You have a lot of time when you're starting out. So stay focused on member acquisition, on meeting people, on executing the TAB processes, and good things will happen. And the ones, the new TBOs that are less successful allow distractions to filter into their world, I think.
Yeah. Steve wants to know, how would you describe the culture of TAB?
I think the culture of TAB is continuous learning. I think it's abundance mentality. I think it's fun. I think it's fun as hell. and I think those are the main things. I think it's caliber.
Yeah. For those who don't know, caliber is what we define as our culture, which stands for community, accountability, lifelong learning, innovation, belief, excellence, and respect. Thank you for saying that, Joe. Excellent. What other questions do you folks have that you'd want to know from Joe? You got one of the most experienced people in the entire organization, so please shoot it out there. How do you think TAB is going to be post-pandemic?
That's a great question, and I think it's going to be, well. So I'm seeing an unbelievable demand for you can't shrink your way to greatness kind of thing from the business community. So I think we have a big opportunity, and I think we have a great value proposition, and I think we've learned a lot, like Jason just said, with regard to the pandemic and ways that we could interact with people through, now that people are much more familiar and comfortable with Zoom and virtual kind of interactions. So how we're going to be in the future, I think we just need to continue learning quicker and learning better and learning more. I think our community is coming together in a better way. I think I've always felt like the community is one of the biggest assets, if not the biggest asset that TAB has. And I think people are using the hotline more. I think they're using Tab Connect more. I think they're using the blueprint more. They're sharing the same kind of, they're reading from the same playbook more. And I think that's, I think that serves us very, very, very well in the future if we can continue to share best practices. To Jason's point, I've been one of the more successful Tab franchisees for a long time, and I've always been surprised how few people call me. And not that I want to be called or I need to be called, but I think that's happening now through the hotline. I mean, that communication is happening through Tab Connect. I think sometimes some franchisees didn't want to call other franchisees just because they didn't want to bother them or because they were too busy or something like that. So now we have a vehicle to facilitate that. And I think that's going to be really good.
Eric just popped in a question. He says, given that the cannabis industry is projected to be $42 billion in 2025, do you have any thoughts on how Tab might work for businesses in this industry? Do you know any TBOs considering and or currently consulting in this industry?
One of my former members sold his company and now he's consulting in the cannabis industry, actually.
Yeah.
But I don't know any Tab people who are specifically doing that. We had 3 or 4 years ago, we had a member who sold his company and invested in cannabis, but no, I don't have any direct experience in that. In Texas is behind the curve in terms of cannabis. So
yeah, and Colorado, where we are, is ahead of the curve. We were the first one. So there are several people in that space, whether it be equipment sales to the industry or financing for the industry, because their banking situation is wonky. And there are dispensary owners who sit on boards here. So if you want to dig in, Eric, let me know, and I could probably find someone who could talk to you more specifically about. Yeah, good. Why do people say no to Tab members?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, so this is a really interesting question. I think the answer is because they don't know what they don't know. But the reasons they give are time and money, right? I'm too busy or I can't afford it. All right. Very, very few people can afford it if they're any reasonable size company. I've played with some prospects, and I've said to them, we're going to have a conversation. It'll last about 45 minutes. At the end of the conversation, you're going to tell me one of 3 things. You're going to say, A, where have you been my whole life? Sign me up. That's probably not going to happen. B, you're going to say, I don't have the money. Or C, you're going to say, I don't have the time. What's it going to be? And, so if you don't want to waste time with people, you can have that conversation and 30 seconds later, they'll tell you. And then you could deal directly with the excuse they're going to give, because that's what it is. It's an excuse. All right. If they meet those requirements that I shared with you earlier, they're willing and able to give and receive open, honest feedback. They're committed to improving their business and their life. All of the rest of that stuff is just smoke and mirrors. So in the conversation, that's really where I always want to get. I want to get to the truth quickly. And if they're giving me excuses, I just want to know, and it's an excuse, you know what I mean? Because there's really only, when you clear away all the smoke, they either think they don't have time or they think they don't have money, right? Or they're going to join. Those are the only 3. Jason, have you heard any other?
One other thing. Yeah, I would say there's one other thing that because we did a survey on this years ago, you may recall, and the top 3 areas was time, money, or value. They didn't see the value or getting it. But at the end of the day, after lots of discussion, it all comes back to value, because if the value was there, they'd have the time. If the value was there, they'd have the money. So,
Right.
Yeah, very consistent, Joe.
Right, and value, and well, this is a really important conversation, especially for newer TBOs, because value is perceived, right? I mean, you can't, if you lined up 100 tab members and said, why is tab valuable and how valuable tab was, you get 100 different answers, right? So value is perceived, and that's why having an effective conversation with people is important on the front end.
All right, how much? All right, we have a few minutes left. Victor has a question. Do contracted coaches pay separate fees to tab?
Do contract facilitators pay? No.
Yeah. No.
No.
Okay, and his second question, can you give us an example of a typical board meeting?
Well, so yeah, I mean, in a typical board meeting, we usually start out by having sort of a either a best and best or sort of a temperature taking of what's going on in each of the members. That's very very quick. Then we sometimes there's some announcements about an upcoming event or some new addition to Blueprint or something that's going on either with Tab Corporate or with locally. Okay, that's a component. And then we time slice and we get into member updates. Okay, and so each of the members of the board will present their respective challenge, issues, problems, or opportunities, and get feedback and advice. And there's a very well documented process in the tab instructions about how to manage those or how to facilitate that with clarifying questions. But everybody gets an opportunity to do that. And then at the end, everybody has an opportunity to discuss a takeaway and or commitment that they have based upon the advice and feedback they got. And then they get to tell us how we did. So, and that's in the Blueprint as well, where they could, score us on their experience and how the meeting went. So that's really the structure of the board meeting, and it's magical in its simplicity, but it's unbelievably effective. And that's another one of those things when you talk about getting off track. I mean, that's facilitating a board is so well documented in the TAB system, but a lot of TAB facilitators that I've seen here try to deviate, and I have to get them back on track.
Yeah. Great. Joe, thank you so much. I don't have any more questions unless you pop one in real fast. Eric says, where do you have your board meetings?
Well, now that we're getting back to physical meetings, we try to have our board meetings at member offices, and we try to do it on a rotating basis. So, and hopefully we try to do that on a long-term basis so everybody knows. But sometimes we have meetings at new locations. Like this past month, one of our members happened to have a vacation house on a river, and he had a sleepover at his house, and they cooked steaks and went skeet shooting after the board meeting, and it was a big time. And if you could do any of that kind of thing with your boards, go for it, because it's sticky as hell and it'll add 2 or 3 years onto your retention.
Joe, I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time to chat with everybody here. Super helpful. Your experience to be able to do this and share this with everyone is invaluable. So thank you very, very much, Joe.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Jason. And if any of you have any questions you want to take offline, feel free to holler at me. I'm Joe at tabaustin.com. You can find me.
Great. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time and asking such great questions of Joe. I hope your rest of your due diligence goes very, very well, and I have the opportunity to meet you in the future. Take care. Thanks again, Joe.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
See you, Jason.
See you soon.